Hello and welcome back to the Sideline. I'm Rory Jones, and today I'm going to be doubling down on my coverage of the National Football League as we reflect on last week's second ever regular season game in Germany and look ahead to this week's matchup between the Indianapolis Colts and the New England Patriots. First of all, I wanted to say a great big thank you to everyone who tuned in to the opening episode, and especially to those dialing in today to hear me continue to ramble on about sport wherever you are in the world, from Miami to Milton Keynes. So, on Sunday, we saw two of the NFL's hottest teams go head to head in Germany as the Kansas City Chiefs defeated the Miami Dolphins by a scoreline of 21-14. This game saw a number of new milestones for the league. Most notably, this was the first game to ever be staged in Frankfurt. And then also, with an average of 9.6 million viewers on NFL Network's platforms, this was the most watched international game ever, with viewership up by 66% on last year's game in Munich. And then one other aspect of this game, it also saw Chiefs, the superstar tight end Travis Kelce, eclipse Tony Gonzalez to become the franchise's all-time leader in receiving yards with 10,941. That's the one who's dating Taylor Swift, in case anyone didn't know. For today's episode, I am delighted to be joined by a true veteran in the international NFL reporting space, Michael McQuaid. Today's guest has gone on to establish Pro Football Ireland, a company which provides comprehensive coverage of not just the NFL, but also the growth of American football across Ireland. He was also among the fortunate 50,000 fans at last week's game at the Deutsche Bank Park. So, Michael, welcome to the Sideline. First of all, can you just tell us what you were doing in Germany last weekend and also what the NFL's doing there?
Roy, first off, Dankeschön. Thank you very much for having me on. I appreciate it. Yeah, in Frankfurt last weekend for the first ever NFL game taking place in Frankfurt, which obviously was between the Chiefs and the Dolphins. Second game to ever take place in Germany, and yeah, just out there for Pro Football Ireland. Not only covering the game but trying to get content both on the Saturday and Sunday. Had serious FOMO because the Dolphins came in on the Wednesday, and to be fair to them, they really made a week of it. They really done a lot for both the local community there and also the press. Chiefs came in later on in the week, but like just overall, Rory, it was a very enjoyable weekend. It's great to see sort of the difference, I guess, between what the German market's like, or I guess the DAC market between Germany, Switzerland, Austria, etc., to the UK market, because it's, for people that aren't aware, it's really different, and both are great. It's just weird and nice to see how different they are. And yeah, really enjoyed it. The game, the fact that we were sitting with 2 minutes to go and we didn't know who was going to win the game, I don't think anybody can complain about that. And just pretty awesome to see two big franchises take to the field in Europe, and long may that continue. Hopefully London gets a game of that caliber next year as well.
Exactly. It sounds like, I mean, it's just hearing you talk about it is giving me FOMO as well. The part of me was wishing I'd have hopped on the plane last minute to to Frankfurt last week to catch the game. But you dubbed this beforehand as being the biggest NFL game ever played outside the United States, which is quite a big claim. Do you think it lived up to the hype?
I I I think it did. I think the first half was quite probably wasn't as full speed as we expected with both teams. I thought Miami struggled in the first half, but then also if you add to that sort of extent of the fact that for me the crowd was mostly Kansas City, and it felt like you were in Kansas City. It was very, very strange. I felt like it lived up to the hype in the sense of the atmosphere was superb. The game in the second half was excellent, just especially whenever the Dolphins came back into it. And I think if they were playing in the US, it could have been the exact same game, especially if the game was in Kansas City. If you had told me at the half when Kansas City were 21-0 up that the Dolphins would be arguably one or two drives away from winning the game, I would have laughed at you. I actually turned around to a friend and said game over at 21 zip. And I was wrong to an extent. Obviously, Kansas City won, but I feel like the second half almost saved it in that way. But the experience was merited of the fact it was the biggest game ever. It felt like even that morning that something special was about to happen. And yeah, it was pretty cool. Like even working in what we do, seeing like Patrick Mahomes walking to the presser after, you're like, this is insane. So yeah, look, I really enjoyed the weekend. I do feel that it's probably the biggest game that we've had, and it's lived up to it. I think the only other real game outside of that in Europe is maybe the Packers Giants, mainly because of the size of the fandom for the Giants, and also because it was Aaron Rodgers and the Packers' first time in London, and the fact that they were a home team also. I think this eclipsed it based upon the fact that this would have been a Sunday night football game in the States if they had it. So, no, look, I feel privileged to have been amongst the 50,000 there last week, and can't wait to do it all again this weekend for the Patriots game.
Sounds like a lot of fun. Definitely with you on the Packers Giants game. I managed to go there last year. It was an absolutely fantastic game. It surpassed my expectations, to be quite honest. I think certainly the fanfare on the Packers side as well. I think when you see some of the sort of real thoroughbred fan bases like Green Bay, you know what that team means to the whole Wisconsin region. It's pretty much a religion in those parts of the world, and I think to see that fan base in London was pretty special. So you mentioned obviously the atmosphere, the feel of the game. It definitely had the aura of a real big matchup, and it seems to have lived up to it on the field. But you were also at last year's game in Munich, I believe, the first ever NFL game to be staged in Germany in the regular season. How do you think last week's game in Frankfurt compared to Munich?
I think it's so. Look, I'll say this for a start. Munich was one of the best experiences I've ever had. I enjoyed Munich more than the Super Bowl last year, which says a lot. And maybe people listening to this are going, "How can you say that?" It was just it's so hard to explain. The crowd was just electric, and obviously having Tom Brady there was one thing, but it just was such a moment. I think it would be unfair to compare both of them like same for same, because for people that aren't aware, Frankfurt's a very different city. I think it might have been like sort of bombed a lot in the war back in the Second World War, and it was a lot of it was built again, and it's not like Munich where in Munich last year there were so many beer houses, and a lot of the teams, even teams like the Panthers that weren't in like they weren't playing in the stadium, but they had like an international presence in Germany, and so like they had like team bars for different teams, and the vibe was just different. It was more of like an American city in Frankfurt. That might be the best way to explain it. So there were two very different experiences. I did prefer Munich based on the experience and the fun that I had, but I love Frankfurt as well. I think, you know, for me, country guy from Ireland, you don't get around countries like Germany a lot, so I definitely am happy to sample any experience, and I would say that a lot of UK fans, a lot of Irish fans, a lot of European fans from different countries outside of the DACH region would have enjoyed Frankfurt last weekend, but Munich's special, and I can't wait. Like, there's obviously a lot of rumors that the Panthers might play there next year, based upon the fact that they're the only team in the global markets advertising scale who have not played, and that's as much as I know. I know nothing, and even if it's the Panthers in Munich next year, I don't think anyone really cares who plays. It's just it's like the perfect city because there's a bar one street, there's a fan bar in the next street. It's just on fire. So be interested to see. You know, we're obviously recording this, Rory, at the time of speaking before the Patriots game. I've got a feeling that it's going to switch up a bit this weekend, and I feel that there's a lot of Pats fans in Germany. I think it'll be electric. There is a Patriots house, HAUS, but it's not like Munich. It's in like hotels and stuff. So it's different. There's no point in saying it isn't. It's different. I very much enjoyed it though, because it's a cool experience to witness something for the first time in a different city that I've never been in before.
Sounds fantastic. I mean, on the Munich side, I'm going there in a couple of months' time, and definitely sold on Munich being an incredible city. It sounds like it's almost tailor made for an NFL game as well. One thing you just mentioned being the New England Patriots. I know that they are the arch enemy or the enemy, the opponent, that team you kind of that everyone, all the other 31 team kind of loves to hate. Kind of the almost the pantomime villains, I guess, of the NFL. But the New England Patriots, love them, hate them. They are arguably, certainly over the last 20 years or so, they are the dominant force in the National Football League. They are the dynasty, they are the empire, spearheaded by the greatest of all time in Tom Brady, by arguably the greatest head coach of all time in Bill Belichick. And I think the Patriots in Germany, to have arguably the NFL's biggest team play on foreign soil and in a region where, as you mentioned, they also have marketing rights in Germany through the NFL's Global Markets program. How big do you think that will be, and how do you think they'll really be able to tap into that fan base? As you mentioned, the kind of the brewing Patriots fans who are kind of in Germany licking their lips at the prospect of seeing their team play in front of them.
Yeah, look, I'm genuinely really excited for this matchup because I think sometimes people can look at the Patriots post Brady and say, well, they're not the same team. I think people forget that like this is Bill Belichick, a guy that we're going to look back on in 50 years and think this guy was a legend of the game. Coming to Germany for frankly what could potentially be his final season in New England, like we did not. I love Munich, but at no point did it enter my mind when I was sitting in a presser with Brady after the game thinking this could be it. The first question he was asked was, when are you coming back? I think people need to realise that this weekend could be a situation where this could be Belichick's final international game. It could certainly be his last game outside of North America with the Patriots. But more so, it's the fact it's the franchise, and you've so many fans that were fans from the Brady era, and not just in Germany, but in the UK and especially in Ireland as well, and just around the world. So, it's an interesting one. Like obviously for people aware, Sebastian Vollmer, a guy who transitioned into American football, played with the Patriots, won 2 Super Bowl rings. He's commentating on the game on RTL in Germany on Sunday, and I can only imagine how he feels going into this week. It must be a very, very proud moment for him to bring his team to his country. I am selling myself the game more and more as I speak here, but I just feel like the Patriots, the atmosphere for the Patriots, they could outnumber the Colts fans 10-1, and but that might not be a bad thing. I think the Patriots, we all know how much of a disappointing season they've had so far, and they desperately need to go over here and win this weekend. So it will be interesting to see how they take to the city. I'll not be there on time for the pressers, but to be a fly on the wall for Bill Belichick's presser in Germany is going to be interesting, especially after people asking Travis Kelce the week previous about his love life. So one can only imagine what Bill Belichick's going to be asked, because it's going to be fun.
We'll actually get on to Travis Kelce in a moment. He is definitely a name we've heard once or twice, I think, over the last couple of months, trying to kind of figure out why that might be. But I think definitely what you mentioned with the Patriots, it's not. There's no real sugarcoating it. It's been their worst season or start to a season, probably definitely I've seen them in my time following the National Football League. I think that they're currently they're sitting there at 2-7. They're facing the 4-5 Colts, who are without their newly drafted franchise QB in Richardson, and as unfortunate as that might be, but I think it's still the Patriots, and it's a home game for them. And as you mentioned, their home fans maybe will be in full voice as well. I mean, we saw last week with Kansas City. You were there, so you might be able to confirm this, but it certainly sounds as though, whilst it might not have been Arrowhead, it still kind of captured the atmosphere of it. Really felt like a Chiefs home game. I can only imagine how loud it must have been during the national anthem when it's the home of the Chiefs, how the fans might have bellowed that across the stadium. But I definitely think it will be a huge advantage to the Patriots having that fan base behind them. And sure, they might be down, might have had a tough start to the season, but it is still Bill Belichick, as you mentioned.
Yeah, couple of things there. I mean, yeah, look, the Chiefs fans were electric during the anthem, but even an hour before, they were going crazy whenever they came on to practice. Like Mahomes went into the end zone just for a run, and the whole place went crazy. So yeah, it was like Arrowhead light is probably the best way to maybe describe it in that sense. For the Patriots, yeah, it's been disappointing. I thought they would have won against Washington last weekend. We've seen against Buffalo and New England a few weeks ago that their offensive line really had a good performance, and Bill O'Brien is trying to adapt plays for Mac Jones, short yardage plays each week that different teams can't get at. They've struggled. I think they could struggle on Sunday. It's a real coin toss for the situation, because the Colts are going to go into Frankfurt, in my opinion, with nothing to lose. And they're going to say, well, everyone's against us because if it's the Patriots home crowd, let's go show them who's boss. And yeah, they might not have Anthony Richardson, but they still have a very serviceable quarterback, in my opinion, for what it is and who they're playing in Gardner Minshew. And when you've got Jonathan Taylor there, I think that really takes it to a level. So I think the neutral, including myself, will want to see a game where it's close, it's tight, but hopefully, now look, the Patriots have not been known this season for scoring points. Hopefully this week it can change. They're not really playing like that to try and effectively score points. They are trying to play and contain, but time will tell. Look, you have the opportunity to see Demario Douglas, a guy that I think questionable this week going in, but he should play. Hunter Henry, Stevenson on the run as well for New England. So they've got a very efficient defense, albeit they've lost some stars for the season. But certainly, I'm buzzing, man. I'm definitely excited.
Yeah, there's definitely some players to look out for on that offense. I think Ramondre Stevenson is definitely one that's kind of slipped under the radar, I guess. But this, he's one of the more explosive backs that you'll see in the league, and I think it's an offense that kind of like the run game has always been important to Bill Belichick, I guess. Even if he has been someone who kind of favors a running back by committee, he's still someone that the run game has always had its role. So am I right in saying you're kind of siding with the Patriots on this one? What would your score prediction be?
I actually have to send my picks in for a graphic after this podcast, so it's difficult to call. It's hard, man. It's because it's the Patriots in Germany. It just feels like Vollmer and the guys are going to get their moment, and I think for a lot of them it means an awful lot. You've also got Bernard Reimann from Austria, who is for Indianapolis, and he's bringing 18 family members, so there's a lot of family ties to both teams this week. Marcel Dabo, also German, playing for the Colts. He's not active, but he's on the roster. It's a weird one. Something tells me that the Patriots will just get it over the line, but I would not be surprised if I'm completely wrong and the Colts run over them. Genuinely, I hope for fans it doesn't happen, but I'm gonna be prudent and take the Patriots by a touchdown and just hope that it happens and everyone goes home happy. I feel like it would be a real positive end for the NFL to end like that this year internationally, and then we just await with expectation in terms of what next year is going to bring.
I mean, to play devil's advocate, do you think the Patriots are going to score a touchdown?
Absolutely.
Okay,
100%.
fair enough.
I think like Mac Jones would go out and lead them to like the first drive touchdown, and then the whole place goes nuts. Like it's like a one-off. It's an experience for them. I find it interesting that both teams are going in on the Friday. I can understand why. That has become a real talking point this year for many different teams. We've seen with the Jags, we've seen how the Bills handled it. I think that could be a talking point, especially going into the weekend. I think the Patriots will not put on a show. I don't think they're at that level, but I think they'll have an efficient run game. I think Mac Jones will get the ball down the field enough times, and their defense needs to come up clutch. But the only X factor there is going to be Jonathan Taylor for the Colts. If he has a day, that could be a difficult thing for them. If they contain him, I think the Patriots win the game.
He's arguably the biggest name player, I guess, in this fixture. I think we had a star-studded lineup last weekend with the likes of Tua, the likes of Bradley Chubb, the likes of Tyreek Hill, Waddle as well, and that stacked Miami team going up against the stacked Chiefs team, of course, with the likes of Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce. So I think it's definitely an interesting one to look out for. Personally, I think I'm just about taking the Colts. I think if I had to give a score prediction, I'd say it's going to be about. I'd say Colts by 10. I reckon Colts win it 20-10. Just because I think the Patriots, like, they might have the one thing that might work to their favor is definitely as mentioned that almost like a home field advantage for them with the fan base there. But I really look at that team. I see a team that's struggling. I see a team that defensively with Gonzalez, for example, was a fantastic pick. Played fantastically well through the first few games. So they lost him for the season. We see the struggles of Mac Jones. One stat just to throw in there, last weekend we saw Kenny Moore of the Indianapolis Colts become the first player in franchise history to score 2 pick sixes in one game. It's been much, I mean, he's been heavily criticised, I guess, Mac Jones, for some of his decision making, his interceptions. He's thrown more pick sixes in his career already than Tom Brady did in 20 years in New England. So if that was one niche prediction, I wouldn't be that surprised to see an interception. But I guess we never know. But it's an exciting one nonetheless.
Time will tell. Mike Gesicki, Jalen Rieger, Ezekiel Elliott, guys that we haven't seen for a while in prime positions. So as an NFL junkie, you'd be happy on Sunday. So look, I'm just looking forward to seeing a fifth international game of the season, and that's the final one. So bring it on; it should be good.
So we've already mentioned a number of sort of key names around the league. I think it's important to also kind of reflect on some of the lesser known players who kind of don't really get talked about as much. So one of those being Travis Kelce. So he had a modest game by his own standards last week with just the 3 catches for 14 yards. But he did actually surpass his another Chiefs legend, Tony Gonzalez, to become the Chiefs' all-time receiving yards leader. How do you react to this feat? Do you think that it's fair to say at this point in November 2023, Travis Kelce is the greatest tight end of all time?
Look, it was a great feat for him last week to do that. He was Andy Reid was asked a question in the press conference in terms of Travis Kelce, and he was like, "Oh well, we used him in a different way," and I'm like, "Okay." I don't really feel that the Chiefs' offense is working as well as it should be this season. When you've got Travis Kelce, when you've got Sky Moore, for example, you should be trying to get more out of them. Just get more out of those guys. Now, Sky Moore had a decent game just last week in Germany. I was surprised at how little Travis Kelce got the ball, and we can put up different with Taylor Swift, without Taylor Swift, sort of like generic graphics if we need to. But he's 34 years of age. I wouldn't say for me he's the best. I think Gronk's the best, but maybe Brady propelled him to that status. I guess maybe whenever you see players leave the league and retire for good at that position, that's when you maybe appreciate him more. I think he's a hell of a player. Like, don't get me wrong, he is so exciting to watch, but I enjoy watching George Kittle more. I know he probably hasn't had the season that we expect this year in comparison to last year, but the Niners are still hot. That Chiefs offense eventually, I think, is going to come and bite them at some point. Now, they need to bring in someone, in my opinion. They've passed the point now where they can bring someone in this season. It's going to be very interesting to see how Kelce and this Chiefs offense can sort of maintain a challenge down the stretch when they go up against a Miami team in the postseason, when they go up against a Cincinnati team in the postseason. But certainly he's a hell of a player. I love listening to his podcast, but there is a scenario where in 2 years' time both him and Jason could be out of the league and their podcast becomes a whole different thing each week. But he's a great player. I think it was a privilege to see him play last weekend. Hasn't played very well through a lot of games this season, but he's still on course to potentially match or just get under his touchdown total in the regular season this year than last year, and I guess he'll be happy enough with that, and he'll argue to me or you that the only thing that matters is come the second week in February if he's standing on that field in Vegas winning the Super Bowl. So I'll keep my mouth shut.
I think with Kelce, it has been an eventful, definitely start to the season. I think on the field, you look at a couple of good games. I think that the game against the Broncos, for example, he seems to be almost the only target for Mahomes in that game, putting up big numbers. I think he's had a couple of big performances. Some of those might have happened to come whilst a certain A-list celebrity pop star was in the stand watching him and cheering him on. But it has been a bit of an up and down season. For me, I think if I could pick a tight end that's going to have the production over, like, say, an 8-10 year stretch, and I could take any tight end ever, I think I'm taking Kelce, because I think the argument is to be had that the likes of Gronkowski in his prime, in his dominant seasons, I think 2011, I look at. I think I look at sort of some of his earlier times in New England, and when he was healthy, when he was on the field, he was a dominant force, not just in the receiving game, but also, of course, in the blocking game, being probably one of the better blocking tight ends in the league as well. But I think if you look at Kelce, like, he's barely missed a game. I think ironically, actually, I think he missed his first season, but then since that first year where he was out injured, he's just been nothing but consistent. And I believe he's almost setting a record every year for consecutive seasons of having 1,000 receiving yards, which used to be almost unheard of for a tight end. And I think you look at Kelce, I believe it's 7 seasons, or he's on course for 7 seasons consecutive of 1,000 yards. and I think he looks set to do that again this year. I think, regardless of sort of just pure ability, I think when you look at the production that he's had, the longevity, he's almost second to none for like an 8 to 10 year stint, for an 8 to 10 year period. But I think fair enough. If you don't think he's the greatest ever, I think, actually, I believe today he was just voted as the People Magazine's sexiest athlete in the world. His podcast, as you mentioned, is one of the biggest in the world and definitely in the sports space. He is still doing incredible things on and off the field. He's still the NFL's best tight end. Is Travis Kelce him?
Yeah, he is. Like he's. Let's be clear, because I was on the sideline last week. He's a good-looking lad as well, so I'll leave him at that. I think what they're doing, like they're sort of transcending the whole space of podcasts for players. Like 2 or 3 years ago, you didn't really see, like, look, there's always been players do media and stuff during the season, but you didn't see them do it to this level, and they've been able to incorporate a way where they sit and record for a week, and then the team behind them lets it go ahead. And then I haven't got the numbers in front of me, but the way that his current love life has transformed certain demographics of people watching the league is incredible to watch, and it'll be interesting to see how it goes down the stretch. There's no reason why Travis Kelce won't be getting his third ring in February at the minute. I've got a rematch. I still think the Chiefs will get it done in the playoffs and get there. It'll be interesting to see if he plays like he played against the Broncos, for example, and turns it on in the big game. Would like to see a bit more of him though after the bye, personally.
Yeah, I think Kelce is doing sense. Both of the Kelces are doing great things. And you mentioned with the podcast, I think one thing which you kind of touched on there, which I think is as far as the NFL goes, I always found it quite unusual actually when I first started following the sport. But NFL players really keep a low profile. They don't get the same media attention as other sports, certainly in the United States. You look at the media exposure of NBA players and the convergence there, the overlap between the NBA culture and then also like kind of almost like the music culture over there, like the Hollywood culture. Like you always see almost like you see an array of A-list celebrities at sitting courtside at NBA games. You've got Drake trying as best as he can to pretty much get on the court. And he get as close as possible to the court itself. And I think it's interesting when you see what these players are doing, what the Kelces are doing in terms of they're kind of becoming much more visible as far as NFL players can go, and in terms of offering insight. I think that's what we crave in sport, especially in the age of sports documentaries. Well, actually, as it happens, Jason has his documentary for this season, but or for last season, and I think it's the access they give, the insight into what the life is like for an NFL player seems to be so invaluable to sports fans, and certainly for people like us who are both NFL fans.
Yeah, like if you look at it from our perspective, the game is growing in Europe, and I feel like it adds another layer to it in the sense of like you get to see what they're like outside of playing. And yeah, it's an interesting comparison because obviously like with like the Premier League soccer, the guys play at minimum 38 to like maybe 50 games a season. The NBA is playing every other night from October to April minimum, and it's different for guys like Jason and Travis or any NFL player that has a podcast or has a different thing going on media wise. Like we've worked with a couple of players this year on it's not a weekly basis at the moment, but like they're starting to think, well, maybe I could do a podcast. Maybe I could do certain things during the week. I've got like 1 hour free here. How will that maybe help me week on week? And like we're talking to certain guys at the minute trying to do that, and that's something that we would like to do in the future. I think if you get the right players, the right sort of styles of players in terms of the way they are and the way they act, I think it's perfect, and I can only see it growing over the next few years. It definitely adds a whole different element to it, especially when you're sitting on a Tuesday morning waiting for more football. But definitely something that I enjoy, Rory, and it's pretty cool to see it grow.
Absolutely sounds like. It sounds like we've got two 92 percenters who are currently talking on this podcast today. Shout out to New Heights podcast. They don't need a shout out because they're already doing amazing things. But it is a fantastic podcast to listen to, and certainly enjoyable to hear from two of the best in the game. I think coming back to sort of mention being us two being people who cover the sport from Europe, and I think we've really seen the NFL tap into the German market. I mean, one statistic which I brought up earlier was being that the 9.6 million average viewers that tuned in on NFL Network and across the NFL Network's platforms to watch this game, and it was actually the most watched international game ever. And you mentioned as well that this was very, very different, that the DAC market compared to the UK. I'd just be interested to know sort of what from what your own observations are. What do you see as those main differences between the NFL fans you have over in Germany, Switzerland, and Austria, and those fans that you have over here in the UK and Ireland?
Um, there's there's more of a distribution of content. People aren't aware. Germany get two games in the early window on television, and they also have an extra game online. And then in the late window, they've got one game on TV and an extra game online. Those games are not blacked out. I think that's a key difference. Now, that is not me going down a rabbit hole. That is merely just the facts of the matter. They seem to have a lot more of an input because realistically, they're on RTL, they're on the guts of like the BBC, for example, or ITV. Sorry, I'm not sure which one. I think it is the equivalent of BBC in Germany. But it's different things. I think one thing that the NFL has done very well with in the UK market this year is the experience that they had on the Saturday. I think it was the first Tottenham game. I think like it's to be commended. I was joking with Monsieur saying I had serious FOMO. I can't wait to go to that next year, and I think that's like the natural progression of what they can do. And obviously they work very well with having the games on Channel 5. They also show the games in the Republic of Ireland outside of the UK market, the ITV coverage as well. So I think what they're doing is very good there. Germany's different. Like, you've got different podcasts. They had a arena show last year in Munich where 6,500 people went to a podcast recording the night before the game. 6,000 people watched the game in an arena instead of going to the game in a stadium. So there are differences, and there are many fans there. And you've got the European League of Football there, which is basically a league under the NFL in terms of that. There, it's not owned by the NFL, but I think the future steps would be for me is to see a team from London go into that. I don't think Brexit would be a factor, in terms of finances or anything. So I think that could be done easily if there is the buy-in. And I think it's building it up from the bottom and doing what the NFL are doing at the minute in London, which is great work. And that's getting the 12 to 24 age group involved in any way that they can. And I think we'll see the benefits of that continue to grow year on year. But it's a very different market, but a market that's working well.
Yeah, I mean, we the success is clear to see in terms of when the NFL does do this. In terms of the international games, we've seen 5 this year. I've been fortunate enough to see my own team, the Baltimore Ravens, play in London, which was a really special experience, something I'll never forget. I think it was a really weird mental thing when it's kind of a team that I'm used to seeing play when I'm across the Atlantic and I'm on the East Coast versus when I'm over here, and having that team on your own doorstep was unbelievable. But I think we see this the sort of the widespread success in terms of the viewership and engagement. But there's also got to be a long-term strategy as to what the why is, what the NFL is really trying to build. And I think you mentioned Germany seems to be kind of much further ahead in terms of that, in terms of the grassroots level. You look at the GFL. They've got 15 teams, and also the European League of Football is pretty much dominated by German teams. You've got 8 of the 17 teams, I believe, are from Germany. In what ways do you sort of... So you kind of touched on this, but do you think for the UK to really, or for London to really kind of enhance its grassroots football, do you think that is definitely the next step, to have a team join the European League of Football, as opposed to the often touted idea of London just going straight into the NFL?
I think have a team in London in the European League of Football, and I think fund it for 10 years and see how it goes. It's not going to make a profit in the first 5, no chance. I think that is one thing. You've seen it work with, I don't have the team name on me, but the London team that joined the Euro League in basketball, I think that's the same sort of thing. Look, I think that's the first step. But I think at the same time, the NFL are doing good work with flag football. They had the first ever female, like young girls, flag event for the Bears and the Jets. There is good work going on with NFL flag in primary schools and secondary schools across the UK, and I know they're putting an awful lot into that, and I think that will reap benefits. I was not on the fence with flag football at all. I just didn't know much about it. We had the opportunity, the European Championships were in Ireland. We went down to it, and I loved it. So I can see exactly why they're putting everything in that, because that gets young people and it also gets females into the sport. I think it's genius. Personally, I think it's actually fun to watch as well. So I think there's that. Um, I think continuing what they're doing about getting the games on free television. I think a game at 6 o'clock should be, and this is my own personal opinion. I think a game at 6 o'clock should be on free television in the UK. And also in Ireland, I think Ireland should have a separate TV deal for something like that there. I think Sky Sports are doing very good work at the minute. You can see them really growing this year with their social presence. And I genuinely mean that. Like, I've seen just a real change. Not that it was bad before, but you just seen a real progression of it.
I
So I
agree.
think
Yeah.
there's a lot of great stuff going on, and it's just continuing to try and build, and just bringing the sport to people in more different ways. And I think having that team would help with that. And I think it's just sort of continuing to keep plugging away and really making the most of what now has turned into a yearly thing. Really, it's not like a September to February thing. It goes on all year round, which is great to see. And look, I know firsthand that the NFL London are putting a serious amount of work in. I think anyone would know to look at what they're doing, and it's great to see. So long may that continue.
Yeah, well, some very, very good points made there. I think with regards to, so I definitely agree with you as well on Sky's coverage of the NFL has been fantastic. Definitely this year, it seems to be. It's always been good, but it seems to only be getting better. I think definitely with the dedicated NFL channel as well in the UK is fantastic exposure for the sport. And I think it's generating that interest among younger fans, which is definitely there, but really kind of getting inspiring people to play the sport is definitely the next step. I think when you look in Germany, it seems a bit different. Like they're kind of just further ahead in terms of people actually taking up the sport. But just one question on the NFL in Germany, just to float this idea out there. I think you've already mentioned previously that you'd be a bit cynical of London just having a franchise in the NFL straight away. Do you think, just putting it out there, do you think in the next few years, or do you think it would be feasible to have an NFL franchise in Germany?
I think having four franchises like a division in Europe works. I don't think having one in London and one in Germany works personally. Maybe you could have one where they do 4 weeks in London, 4 weeks in Germany, but at the same time, I just don't think that works either. I don't know. I think we're very fortunate to get games internationally, and I feel like the way it is cool. I don't think the Premier League would put a team in a different country, so why? And I know that's a whole different conversation. So why should that happen? I used to be all for a London team, but we all support teams now.
That's
What's
true. Yeah.
yeah, like what, like I feel like you've got like a nice thing at the minute where you got a few games, and we should all be very grateful for any games, but I feel like that's cool. If it was going to expand, have a European division, and go four teams at once. Genuine, I think that's the way to do it. I Is the demand there for that? I don't know. Like, I don't have the stats, but I guess the thing I'd be scared of is if it doesn't work, where does that leave us? And it's like, you've got a good thing at the minute, don't ruin it. But I guess it'll be the thing where people always talk about it. And I think we just got to keep plugging away, got to keep going. I compare it to, in no way, shape, or form, but like the main sport in Ireland, Gaelic football. It's an amateur sport. It's not really played around the world. However, you've got places that play it. Um, it's not going to grow outside of Ireland. Like, obviously you get like teams in New York and stuff in different places because of heritage, but that's our thing, and it's special. And I would say a lot of Americans have the same thing about the NFL, and like they would look at, it's their game, and I think, look, the world plays it, of course. I think maybe the best way to just do it is just to have those games, and obviously build under it, and have leagues under it, and do certain things, and
Yeah.
maybe in 20, 30 years time there's a different discussion to be had, but that's how I would do it. But that, Rory, is why I'm not being paid the big bucks to make these decisions. If they announce a team in London, I'll get behind it straight up immediately. Same with Germany, of course I'll get behind it. So yeah, I'm just on the fence with that. I haven't really decided.
I think just to play devil's advocate here with Gaelic football. Am I not right in saying there is an American team that plays in the Gaelic
And
League.
there's also London as well. Yeah.
GAL?
There is London and New York who take part in the equivalent of what like the NFL, like the Super Bowl is like from the very start. They have to qualify, and sometimes they don't. New York actually got like a step further than they did last year. They beat a team from Ireland, which was a big deal at the time. And it's played worldwide around as well. So yeah, it's weird, it's funny, but it's cool. Like you tell people there's a team in London and they don't believe you, but there is. So there you go.
Well, it's definitely. I mean, I thought I'd put the idea out there. I think just for the hell of it, I personally, as a fan, as someone who takes an interest in Germany in general, certainly in Munich, I think the idea of a franchise based in Munich or even in Frankfurt competing in the National Football League would be an interesting one to see, especially when you think as well about sort of not just like kind of the kind of not getting ahead of ourselves. When you think in terms of what's already there, we already have the likes of the Munich Ravens, we have the Munich Cowboys, the GFL team, and then in Frankfurt we have the Frankfurt Galaxy. Beautiful jerseys, by the way. I'm pretty sure Travis Kelce managed to cop one of those for during his trip. I mean, if they wanted to sort anyone else out, I'm sure we're all ears. But I think it seems to be at least it would be an easier transition, though. I think they already have the framework there. It'd just be a case of almost like almost just taking things to the next level. I think personally, it's always I think for me the biggest obstacle for there to be a European team in the NFL is the collegiate system, and in terms of having players, you'd have to be involved in the draft, but you also have to be sort of, if you had British universities, for example, that were somehow part of the portal, it would have to be something along those lines. I'm not paid the big bucks either to make those decisions, so I'm sure those who are will be factoring these things in, or perhaps not. But whilst a lot of this conversation is speculation, one thing which the NFL or Commissioner Roger Goodell has confirmed is they are looking at bringing an additional international game to the regular season next year in 2024. So Brazil and Spain have been widely reported as the two countries the NFL is really considering in terms of its next international adventure. How do you react to this? So, how do you see either of these two countries as a kind of good host for this almost next stage of the NFL's international experiment?
I think they're both perfect countries because the NFL, I didn't realize how big the NFL was in Brazil. It's huge in Mexico, but it's massive in Brazil, and you could really see them playing a game there soon because it sort of ticks that South America thing, but it's a whole new market for them. And more sort of suited to talk about Spain. The Bears and the Dolphins both have marketing rights there, but more so you see a renovated Bernabeu for the 2030 World Cup and the new Metropolitano Stadium, which had the Champions League final a few years back whenever Liverpool won. I think they're both perfect, and whoever gets it will have a great experience. I think either country will be perfect. I'm going to remain coy on which country I think will get it and which stadium in Madrid I think gets it if it is Madrid, but I have no doubt that Spain at some point will have a game. If it's not next year, it'll be very soon after. I'd be interested to see them if it becomes a yearly thing like London or Germany, how they mix and match it. I think they'll probably, again, I'm talking from a fan perspective here. I have no idea or input on this, but I'd like to see them do the Bernabeu 1 year, the Metropolitano the 1 year after, and maybe see the San Mamés in Bilbao get one, and Barcelona as well when that's done up. I think moving around Spain, I think the Spanish people deserve a game as much as London because the fandom is ridiculous in a good way. Some great guys and girls over there doing work for the NFL, and they will deserve it surely when the time comes, and it won't be far off. And it's just great to see it grow and grow and grow, and it's gonna be awesome when it happens.
Certainly, great to see the NFL looking even further afield, and I think Spain is an interesting market as well. I think it's in some ways like Germany in the sense that the German market has been so dominated by football, It's like in my previous episode, the conversation I had with Tiziana, it was kind of similar. Like they don't really have that number two sport the same way we would in the UK. You've got rugby and cricket, both huge sports. You'd have people arguing those are the national sports. Certainly in terms of cricket, you look at Germany, and it's really got an opportunity for there's a real opportunity for the NFL to be that number two sport. I think in Spain, I'd argue is kind of similar in that football, for obvious reasons, probably arguably the two biggest football clubs in the world hail from that part of the world, and uh, incredible football market that's the number one sport. But I think if there's any room for the NFL to kind of become that number two sport, that would be incredible to see.
Yeah, you've got the population there that want to make it happen, and like Germany, you've got teams that play also there as well, and we've seen Madrid are going to have a team in the European League of Football now in 2024. So there's definitely the scope for it happening. There's been fan parties that have taken place, and there's a lot of podcasts. The Zone have got a head office in Madrid, and there's an awful lot of money marketing being put into it, and the fans are there. It'll sell out if and when it happens, regardless of the opposition. So I'm all in. I think there's a real potential there for it to grow and grow and grow, and we know football rules in Spain. There's no reason why American football can't grow and grow and grow, especially for a new market as well. So I'm sure we'll not be far off seeing a player from Spain or different countries play in the league as well, the way that just the way that it is going as well.
I'm certainly going to retweet one of your reposts, should I say, one of your ideas, or in terms of a venue which I think would be perfect for the National Football League would be the Bernabeu Stadium. Home to, let's admit it, the biggest football club in the world. It's just had a massive renovation as well. We've seen the new Bernabeu unveiled in recent months. You see like the roof and everything, and you see the atmosphere on game day where you see Jude Bellingham scoring his 60th goal of the season. In another comeback win to bring Madrid back, and you see the atmosphere there, and you also see the developments they made as well. And I thought this at the time when they were doing the renovation, and they involved the plan of having another like a turf field under the football pitch. For me, that's you're not going to spend that much money on making such renovations to a stadium without some sort of end goal. Personally, I think an NFL game at the Bernabeu, I'm going to be on the next flight to Madrid, I think, for that one.
Well, like me last week, who had to go to Frankfurt very quickly, it's 5 minutes on the train from the airport. The Metropolitano, you can see it when you're flying in. It's right beside the airport, so I'm fully on that wagon. However, I think they'll play at both stadiums. Personally, I don't know if this is official news, but I feel like both. I think it's news. I think like both clubs have presented their case to the NFL. I think that's something that obviously would happen anyway. But I know both teams are interested in hosting, so I'd like to see it shared around. I think both stadiums are great. The Metropolitano, what it does have going for it is it's in the back arse of nowhere beside the airport. You could put a massive experience outside it. It's got an underground station. Obviously, the Bernabeu is special, but it's in the city centre. So I think there are pros and cons. But I think both will happen before the end of the decade. I can't see why it wouldn't, to be honest with you.
I'm no expert in this field. I'm not. Thank God I'm not an architect. But I think one thing about the Wanda Metropolitano as well is one thing about the Metropolitano for sponsorship reasons is that it's meant to be one of the loudest stadiums, I'm pretty sure, in Europe, and the way that it's built is almost sent to kind of accentuate the volume there. And I'm just imagining what an NFL game would look like there too, in terms of the fanfare and the sheer volume. If you had a team. We've just seen the Chiefs play in Germany, where, by the sounds of it, quite literally by the sounds of it, it was an electric home atmosphere with, with a crowd that really found its voice. It's fair to say. I think if we had one of the NFL's bigger teams playing in Madrid, where the fans really got behind them, say, just to throw some names out there, if you had, say, the Eagles, or if you had the Bills, or even my Baltimore Ravens or the Pittsburgh Steelers, one of those teams, or any team for that matter, playing in front of a crowd like that could really get behind them, that would be absolutely unbelievable for the sport, especially if it wants to assert itself and plant its flag in the Spanish market.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to see how the Bears and Dolphins have taken to the market. They had a big party in Barcelona last year for the game at the Hard Rock Cafe in the city centre. There was 400 or 500 people at it. The Bears, as of the time of recording, are sending over 100 yards I don't know what 100 is in Spanish, but 100 yardas with Javi Gomez, Luis Jones, and the guys, Iker Sagisti, who commentates on the Zone in Spain. So I mean, they're flying them over this weekend to commentate in the game. They're putting a serious amount of effort into that. You can think of that as you will. So I don't know. I have no input to that conversation whatsoever. But look, I was in Spain holidays last week, and they're ready to go. I think they feel like it's going to happen, and time will tell if the NFL do. I mean, the official words from Mr. Goodell last week and the official words from the NFL were that they're making the decision in the next 45 days. I wouldn't be surprised if it was Spain. Time will tell.
Time will tell, certainly, and I think also in terms of destinations, it's not a bad one, is it? If you're if you're coming from the US, you're coming from the UK, maybe Germany, and you're there in sunny Spain for a few days, make make the most of your experience there. I think being in such a vibrant city like Madrid, all there is to offer there, and besides the game day experience, it would certainly be an enticing one for not even if you're not the biggest NFL fan in the world. If you just wanted an excuse to go to Spain for a few days, it would be quite a good excuse.
Absolutely, mate. Si, senor. I'm like, get me on the plane. Do you know what I mean?
It's honestly making me want to get to the airport right now. But Michael, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show today. Thank you very much for joining us and sharing a lot of insight, I think, with regards to what the NFL is doing on and off the field. And wish you all the best.
Thank you, Rory. Best luck with the podcast, and I will come on anytime. Thank you so much.